Should we wait one more minute or should we get started?
Wait another minute. Let me text Kevin.
He's the man of the hour.
Right, exactly. So let me text him to get his. Sure, he knows we're waiting.
Our meetings are shrinking.
Yeah, it's getting to the end of the year. Let's see if it brings him. He's here. Look at that.
Hey,
Text and magic happens.
Sorry, my system had to update the client or something. It was sitting there doing its thing.
you know, I woke up this morning and my phone wouldn't turn on.
Oh no.
You realize how freaky that is? I thought I had $1,000 brick, or however in the heck much it cost. I was not a happy camper.
And then you figured out which of the three buttons was what turned it on.
Yeah, I had to a hard restart.
Yeah.
Kevin, is this yours?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. You can hold on to it for a minute.
All right, everybody. I'm going to call this meeting to order at 2:05.
Light attendance right now.
Yes, it is. Again, it is the end of the school year. But hey, all right, keep on going.
I'll keep it on in the waiting room.
Sure. Let's go ahead and do roll call. Dr. Gadvina Ageti, Gire. What did I do? Sorry. I'll note that you're present as iPhone. I'm just going to call the people who I know are here and everybody else is absent. Todd McWhorter.
Here.
Let's see, Dr. David Moore.
here.
Lorenzo Marassa.
Here.
Kevin Olson.
Here.
Dr. Daniel Sandoval here. Jeffrey Weinstein is here, and noted that Ed Bond is in the audience. Hey there, sir. All right, all other members of the committee are not here at the present moment. Hopefully they will come in shortly. So can we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Ready? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it
which
stands,
stands
one nation under
nation
God.
under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. All right, approval of the agenda. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
I can't.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Approval of the minutes. There's two
2 meetings.
minutes there, 2 meetings in there. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
All right. Financial facilities, funding, and finances. It's our only agenda item. And I think this is where Kevin, Mr. Olson, you take the floor. And Jeff, would you like to set the stage at all?
Oh, sorry. So yeah, we last meeting we talked about recommendations to the board for different construction projects, and if that went forward to the board in an information item, and it's going to the board for ratification this coming meeting, but along with doing things construction wise, there's the finance end of it that we have to be very much aware of and prioritize the funds to where they need to go, or what is our highest priority, because as Kevin has said before, it's kind of a domino effect. But also the other thing is understanding the escalation of costs, as well as what projects we've already put money aside for, and all those different things. So I will hand it over to Mr. Olson. Do you need me to make you a co-host? So you can,
let's see.
or just,
No,
okay.
good.
He should be able to share now.
I'll share the screen. All right, got my pretty little Excel sheets that some of you are going to be familiar with already. Is that going to be that big enough for people to see? Can zoom in a little bit more, but we'll have this.
Yeah.
Okay. So across the bottom here, I have measure Q, measure P, and then a list of our total funds. So I'm going to kind of burn through this real quick, and then I think we can go back for some discussions and highlights if we want. So the district has had a few different study sessions with the board. Measure Q is our 9 through 12 Union High School facilities bond. There's currently $20.4 million of unencumbered money. Some of the main projects identified so far, we're looking at a new pool facility at this point. We're doing some studies on that. We have a new performing arts facility. We have some light ideas on that, but nothing too in depth that generate that estimate. We're currently in Peach here. We have 2 items that we're currently in design on, and I'll get back with some information on that for the 600 wing, which we used some Measure Q money, and we also got the CTE grant to the tune of $832,697. We put a little bit of money in just general modernization pot for the high school to use for, changing out windows and updating general facilities around the high school. We've identified a need to update the cafeteria kitchen, and we're currently in design phase to update our library literacy center. So that's Measure Q and some of the items that we've discussed in the past. Measure P is our TK through 8 facilities bond. And we currently have a little over $30 million in that account. We have some projects that have been underway to the tune of about $800,000, leaving about $29.5 million unencumbered so far. We also have some general allocations to sites that we've told them, if they have other projects, the board already approved some funds. They still have some of that remaining to continue to do some updates. And so we have, whether or not we want to continue to access these allocations out of Measure P or not can be something that we can discuss. So, right now at this point, really unencumbered, we have about $29.5 million, but there's a few other things on here. Sorry, McKevitt electrical should be up here at this point. That's underway. So we have, around 29 million to consider for this. And then I wanted to talk about, I know, we have more pots than just our 2 bond pots. And so this is a quick summary of all of our major facilities, pots of money, all of our different funds. So in similar order, we have Measure Q, we have Measure P, we have developer fees. We have about $6 million in developer fees right now in the bank, and we expect to get at least 4 more over the next 3 years from the harvest. And this number is really always going up. I made this this Excel maybe about a month ago, actually, and we've even had things like the People's Place, over here off of Harvard popped up, and that was a check for about $220,000 developer fees. So those projects keep popping up around town and filling up this fund. We have a little over $2 million in Fund 35, which was state bond reimbursements for facilities, and we have more in the queue. So hopefully we'll get some good news from the state, and maybe some more of our unfunded approvals will become funded approvals in the next year. We have Fund 401 with about $7.7 million. That's a special capital projects fund. We put away our RDA money in there every single year. It goes into that account, and so that's capital facilities. And then we, of course, we had that CTE grant, and so we're working on using that money. So the total was about 67.4 million. We of course have those encumbered funds we talked about, and leaving us about $63 million of total funding available for all of our considerations. Do we want to talk about any of these particular projects, or do you want to just kind of identify what we were talking about at our last meeting, which was Harvest, Isbell, and some movement around the DO?
Kevin, there's Lorenzo.
Yeah.
There's the recent kind of update on the May revised, the surplus. How does that figure into this? I know it's still early, but what are the implications here, or the good news, I guess?
Yeah, it's good news. So the major implications are that the governor proposed to fund those unfunded liabilities that I was talking about regarding the facilities bonds.
Right.
So it's matching money here. The state hasn't issued new bonds for a long time to take care of the match that they have promised districts for many facilities projects over the last decade or so. And so in the governor's budget, he continues to increase. He's going to use some general fund money to take care of some of those unfunded liabilities. So that could mean, I know we have a few in the hopper. I'm not sure where they're at in the order exactly, but it could mean a few $1 million more for us. Also, when we talk about the Isbell building, last year we had a meeting with the DSA, and they did some calculations, and we'll get about $8.5 million in this monies from the state in hardship money, which is kind of the same pot. So the fact that he's funding that should make it easier and more guaranteed that we'll get that money. We get to jump the line, but even jumping a line to nothing is still nothing. So it's nice he's putting some money in that pot. Yeah, the general fund overall, it's great that solid COLA numbers, some other good one-time monies. They're still very overall cautious, and so they're making a lot of one-time pots of money for us. The big one was an $8 billion proposal that they call a discretionary block grant. So I guess when we'll see how discretionary it is, and we can decide, the board can decide if facilities is an option, we might be able to tap it for some more facilities if we really needed to. I mean, we do have a pretty good chunk of change here right now. I recognize we have a lot of projects on the horizon, but I think it'll be hard to allocate general fund money towards facilities until we actually have a project staring us in the face that we don't have money for, which I'm not a fan of getting into that position, act straight up into that position, but I think we're nowhere near that position right now. So it's hard to even imagine which project that might be and where it, when it might happen.
So the facilities pot that he's talking about is $4 billion over 3 years. And so, some of this seems like, we don't want to count on it, but we don't want to ignore that money either. I don't know if there's some sort of kind of waterfall, right, where, we can do X, Y, or Z, and, if the money doesn't come in as expected, Z drops off. I don't want to over allocate or under allocate. You know, because it's a little bit, this stuff is kind of fungible, right? So in another instance for that is like the deferred maintenance. You know, we do have a growing deferred maintenance fund. We also are looking at the cap hit, right? The 10%, because we're at what, like 20% of reserve.
Yeah.
So we've got 10% of that we're going to have to allocate somewhere. You
Yeah.
want to talk about that a bit in terms of, you know, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and so we talked about that at the board meeting last week, was the 30-year plan for deferred maintenance. And if the board chooses to allocate some of the extra reserves that we have into that fund, it will take some pressure off of Measure P and Measure Q and really all these funds that we're looking at, because we can tap any of them for deferred maintenance. But if we bolster that fund a little bit, then we won't have to use it, you know, these funds for just painting and roofs and fixing playgrounds and all that stuff, which, you know, we had a lot of that on the horizon, or we've done a lot of that this year, and we'll have to continue to do a fair amount, you know, $500,000 to $1 million worth of upgrades, deferred maintenance and modernization in the next few years. So yeah, I think, I don't know, there's going to be some proposals at the next board meeting, or everybody will be able to see on Friday, that you know, we are proposing that some of that money go into deferred maintenance, which will help us alleviate these funds of those expenses. So there's opportunity there as well. But I think that you know, what we have to do is probably still kind of consider through these project lists, you know, where we might loosely allocate some money. And so, and also along those fronts, we can talk a little bit about, we just got the bids back yesterday for the 600 building, and prices are going up, definitely. So we've got some good deals on painting and hardscapes earlier in the year. But as we, you know, for maybe other reasons other than just inflation, but the bids for the 600 building, our low bidder is $4.4 million. So you can see that.
Ouch.
Yeah, about $1 million over, and actually we had a little over $3 million allocated towards the project at this point. So it's going to mean we need to come out of pocket for about another $1.5 million probably.
Well, and which is one of the things that I'm a bit concerned about in terms of our estimates, because some of these estimates are pretty old. Like, so for instance, a new pool, like, do we really think 6 million is enough at this point? I mean, that's a lot of concrete. That's a lot of concrete, and concrete is not cheap right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and that's the hard part. So, you know, since the board meeting where we talk about the pool, we have talked to a few architects, a few pool designers. We've kind of let them know our overall plans, but I don't think we've had anybody weigh in on the budget yet directly, kind of on the plans. So I'm not sure if that $6 million is going to hold up or not. You know, some of it has to do with our own expectations of what we're getting done.
True, right? You know, and you know, along the same lines, you know, looking at something like the Performing Arts building, you know, $5.5 million. Oh gosh, what are we going to get for that? You know, you know, there seems to be, you know, so much uncertainty, you know, in these numbers because of the cost escalations, you know, and it's hard to, you know, envision, because we're kind of looking at it in buckets like Q and P, even though we know we do have extra money, right? What we have about 20 million on top of Q and P.
Right. But so I think, you know, one thing to consider would be like the developer fees. I think that overall, since we're going to study harvest, I think we should put the developer fees would be appropriate for a harvest school, right? So as we work on the feasibility study, you know, I think we should consider the fees of the developer fees as the budget for the harvest school. You know, these two pots of money, we can, I think Fund 401 is something that I like to use for district facilities if we, so as we consider some of the consolidation at this point, I mean, we're probably looking at a net win overall as we drop two new portables on the main campus to get everybody over here. Once we sell the Santa Barbara building, you know, if we get 800 to $1 million, you know, this one portable is about 175,000. That portable is going to have a bathroom. It's going to be a little bit more, but I think that in the end, we'll end up putting money into the bank versus it overall those moves costing us money. But as we have to spend money, Fund 401's the best bet. That way we can always say Measure P and Measure Q went directly to schools. And this fund, it was the only thing tapped ever if we needed to do any facilities at the district office. But still, we're not going to need nearly that much money, so we can consider that for extra projects.
So what is missing from this list, right? So, you know, harvest isn't listed, right? So I think that we need to kind of think about listing that out, you know. I know what else, we were once talking about a multi-purpose room at Bedell. I think
Yeah.
that dropped off the list, right?
So that's a measure, and on Measure P, we have a little bit less of that kind of list of everything that we want to do. We have the McKevitt Electrical, which at this point goes up here.
Actually, Kevin, if you hide the ribbon, we can see a little bit more altogether.
Up here?
You see a little on the left-hand side, there's a little up arrow.
You want me to hide these guys?
Yeah, just gives us a little more space.
A little bit more, okay. So that goes up there. We had these potential projects. So we have Isabel main building is huge. You know, this is one of the reasons why we still have so much money in Measure P is because the uncertainty around the Isabel main building construction.
That's 20. See, that's the thing though, right? I mean, that one is a bit somewhat misleading, right? I mean, because it's between say 20 and 25 if we're lucky, right? But that doesn't all, but you said you were talking about that reimbursement, you know, of up to $8 million, right? And so it's like, okay, well, that could be an extra $8 million, you know, that we're not spending out of Measure P, which gives us more flexibility for what we do, seems, right?
What if we kind of put it like that?
I'm good with that, right? Again, it's you know, that's not, that 8.5 isn't in that total district facility funds, but it's something that could be there, right? That should be there. And again, it's not in our bank account yet, which makes me, and we're not even allocated yet. Until we do, it's fictitious, but it's something that is expected. And, you know, not all of this is going to be taken care of all at once, right? So, you know, if we do prioritize this list well, you know, some of the other things may have to wait until we get those hardship funds in, you know, until we know that we're getting those hardship funds in.
Well, definitely.
You know?
That's why, so I think I mean, all we can do is stare down those dominoes and, you know, we have a plan, but we don't know how much these projects are going to cost until we finish them. So I think all we can do is march through those. And when we start to get to the point where we realize we're going to run out of money to finish, you know, X, Y, and Z, then that's when we need to start figuring out what other pots we're gonna tap. If we're ever gonna go out for another bond, if, we're always looking at state grants. We're always gonna stretch our money as much as we can. At this point, the feasibility study for Harvest, we don't know what other developer agreements we might be able to strike with the developers over there. But I think all we can do is start marching down those, allocate the money necessary for now, start moving on those projects. And as we finish projects, we update.
How much, here's a question for you in terms of Measure P, minus Isbell. How much are all of those project underways and allocations?
Minus how much?
So it's basically, you've got that 1.3, and then how much is the Webster site allocation all the way down to the McKevitt HVAC?
Oh, these guys too?
Yeah.
2.7.
So a question, right? Is it fair to say that those are deferred maintenance?
A lot of it really has been. I mean, I think that if we add the funds to the deferred maintenance account, I think I can clear up. I mean, also right now, look, this hardscape painting, this is deferred maintenance all right here, $654,000. We're under contract for. We could move all this to deferred maintenance right now if we had the money in that account. So right there, we're clearing up over $650,000. And yes, a lot of these site allocations were basically to take care of deferred maintenance. They all needed this stuff, paint and hardscape and playgrounds. And, we've done windows and HVAC at all these schools. It's the basics.
Kevin?
Yeah.
On that note, these site allocations, if we, I guess my question would be, a year from now, there's a possibility that similar allocations are going to be needed for these things. Well, maybe not painting again, but I guess how far away are these schools from getting to where, I'm thinking that we're branding our schools, we're doing this, so we want to make sure they look good. So is it going to take a hell of a lot or several years of similar ongoing upgrades to get them to where they need to be?
No, I mean, I hope that we're able to continue to march, through with these projects, and hopefully in another year or so, we've taken care of most of them. I mean, so we painted Webster right away. We've got Blanchard done inside and out. We did Glen City outside. The inside of their classrooms are pretty reasonable right now. We got a couple of things done over there. So, and then Thiel and McKevitt are being done this summer. So as far as painting goes, that only leaves Bedell unpainted. So we've got 5 out of our 6 schools painted so far. 2 of them are getting major hardscape work done right now. Glen City's already done on hardscape. So 3 other elementary schools are going to need hardscape. This is just the elementaries. And then we need to consider playgrounds. Glen City's already got their playground, and the other schools, we need to consider what our playground maintenance and upgrades are going to be, because most of their structures are dilapidated. And we're looking into right now what we could do just as far as maintenance goes to maintain those and stretch them out a little bit longer, but many of them are not going to last a lot longer. But I still think they're the ones that need to be done. Hopefully we can get done in the next year, 18 months, and then we're going to be good. One thing that we worked on here, and I'm not sure if you saw at the last board meeting, I'll show you guys some of the inside the kitchen here. So this is the deferred maintenance program that I've been working with. And So this is what shows us, this is how we know what projects we're working on, where our fundedness is, how much we're spending on our different categories here. This is the components that I have loaded in at the moment. So there's still more we could put in here, but I've tried to be conservative and not overwhelming the system, so to speak, with just every last thing. We're trying to take care of the major stuff first. This is the chart that I shared with the board. It has our reserve funds in green here. It has our anticipated expenditure in blue, and then the ending reserve balance is the line. And so you can see here where we're below zero, we're in the red. So this is why we need to add some money here. And then what I look at is my funding analysis here. And what I like to look at is I can go down and we can see the 30-year chart. And within the system, I can actually just hover over it. You can see what we need, what's scheduled for that particular year. So this one I can see that all these play structures, asphalt, play structure, roofing are landing that particular year, and then I can adjust the years to put them to kind of even out the load. But what we do, the way that this works is you add a component and you tell it how often you need to do this work. So when you do that, you have a useful life remaining years. So this basically says every 5 years, it's going to repeat on that system of, upgrading, doing reseal and stripe the asphalt, say in this particular component. Structure about 15 years. So this basically it repeats it every single cycle. So it keeps it cycling over 30 years.
Do you have an inflationary component that you can add to this?
Yeah. So in our financials, right here, we define inflation. So I have a 3% inflation rate in here, which I think is still fine over a 30-year period. We get an interest rate, so we get to earn a little interest on our reserves, which is realistic. We do. And then we can increase our annual contributions as well. So the system is set up to do an annual contribution. This is what we're doing this year. And it's set up to increase that as well. You can tell it like, you're going to keep up with inflation basically on your rate of contribution. So that's our standard setup right now.
So kind of going back to Lencha's question, right? I think the short answer is we have a bucket of work that we know we need to get done and clear out, right? That we've anticipated already and is built into that. But going forward, as we keep on contributing in a regular fashion to the deferred maintenance fund, that maintenance will be funded out of that accumulative contribution. We shouldn't have to go and do a bond because we don't have asphalt, that we have cracked asphalt everywhere, or that our roofs are, leaking and falling apart. Those types of things are built into this model, so we don't get into the same position that we are currently in.
Exactly. Yep, that's the plan.
Well, my question was kind of along the lines of, I see, and I know the idea perhaps of either improving the swimming pool or replacing it, at a tune of some $6 million possibly. And so I was just saying, are we being equitable with the other schools? So I'm thinking I would like to see those elementary schools having some really nice looking playgrounds, for instance. In other words, a high school gets to have their little, their playground, the swimming pool. Well, let's make sure that these kids at the elementary school have things where they can, they're not dealing with, like I said, dilapidated stuff and having to wait 2-3 years to get them on board. If there's money, let's take care of them. If there's someone, I think there's mentioning of improving a multi-purpose room. There again, if we're thinking of doing something at the high school at a pretty substantial amount, let's balance the situation so that these other schools also get their facilities, taken care of, especially right now that there's a little bit of surplus money to be able to do it. That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's going to be one of the hardest things is because the K-8 bond, so to speak, right now is the Isabel building is dependent on that money.
Yeah.
It kind of paralyzes us a little bit on some of the other potential large projects that could come from that. Now, to your point, we could just say, hey, you have $7 million here. Why don't you go, either look at the playgrounds. Playgrounds are about $250,000 to get a pretty reasonable playground. So we need we need 2 playgrounds kind of immediately at this point, like real soon.
Yeah.
We have just fixed up Thiel's playground. I would say McKevitt's might be on the list eventually. And Webster's is pretty nice, but could use some cleanup. So we have 2 in the near term we should do, and the other 3 are probably on a 3 to 5 year plan, or they need updating. But we could just say, hey, so if we have 2, you need $500,000 to $700,000, like just do it, and we could start moving forward with the design and say, let's use Fund 401, and that way we know those schools are going to get playgrounds. MPRs are going to be interesting. So I mentioned the building costs, and maybe it's another thing we want to rip the Band-Aid off. If we've identified a school where we know our student population is going to be the same, so I mean that by grade level, our grade level configuration is going to be steady, and it needs an MPR, then maybe we should start moving forward with the design of an MPR somewhere. But I do think that that's part of what we committed to studying next year, because we still need to decide if any of our schools are going to become a K-8 school. And so I think that's where the hesitation for major construction happens at the elementary sites, because if any of those were to become a K-8, then we'll need to fold that into the design.
How much do we say? So going back to measure P, right? Now, I'm not, again, I think Lengel's point is well taken. In as much as we can do some of these other costs with deferred maintenance, I do think that that's preferable to leverage that. I mean, $500,000 is not much for playgrounds, right? Especially if some of those can be pulled from somewhere else. So even within this fund, right, if you say 25 million for Isbell and we're going to get 8.5 back, that's 17.5? No, 18.5 overall cost then, right? You still got $30 million, or excuse me, you've got gosh, we have 30 million in the pot there, so minus the 18, we still have $12 million. Like, do you think $12 million would be a good allocation for potential multi-purpose rooms and around the school district or any other things?
Yeah,
like
I mean,
that?
I think so, depending on everything involved in that particular multi-purpose room. But we were tossing around, so the district has actually talked about for many years, I'm told, a multi-purpose room at Goodell. They don't really have a proper cafeteria, and their library is really just a modified classroom as well. So I think they were talking about a legit multi-purpose room there. They talked about it a lot in the past, and last year we even talked about it with our architect and some of the designs in considering Bedell as a K-8. And we tossed around a number around $5.5 to $6 million. I don't know if that's Mr. Gardner's favorite number or if he can really get stuff done for that, but that's what his kind of initial thoughts were on MPR for that space. Now I think maybe we can add another 20% to that. So maybe we need 6 to 6.5 million, but then again, we'll see. We'll see if how much of this inflation is transitory, as our Fed friends say quite often. I do think that we're going to get some price competition here pretty soon, and if we bid things at the right times, if we time it right, that we can get some better bids. You know, same thing. Our painting and our hardscape bids were pretty much in line with what we were expecting. Just this latest bid, and I do think that some of that has to do with the timing, because all these contractors get ready. They know all the work is summertime, so we got bids from 3 different contractors in the end, and we had up to 8 qualified. And I think that the bids didn't come in as aggressive, and we didn't get as many because guys already had all the jobs they needed for the summer, you know, at this point in the year. So, you know, unfortunately, we got a very late DSA approval on this one, and we really want to get it done. So it's going to be going to the board on next week. But perhaps next year we get some better pricing.
Is there, so not everybody's on this, you know, call has been privy to what we were doing in design day, right? And none of that's finalized, you know, for sure. But, you know, I know in terms of, say, Isbell, right? They were talking about being a CTE academy, what have you. You know, do they have a building that would even that they could do? And I think Jeff has talked about a makerspace type of thing. But you know, is there anything else? Like, you know, are there anticipated expenses or expansions that we might need to think about? And again, I think especially as it relates to Isbell and, you know, programming that might be coming up.
I mean, I would say that I think as we consider building new buildings at Isbell, it's the perfect time to design them in. They do already have a pretty reasonable, you know, the old locker rooms, I think, the old gym space over there. If you haven't been in that building that was rebuilt a couple of years ago before COVID, that actually kind of used to be Jen Eric Sands kind of maker space back there. But it's a very modern space, and it's got all the power coming down from the ceilings, and it's kind of ready for that if we needed it. And we did put away $3 million of our ESSER 3 money in our spending plan to help with, you know, buying stuff for design day. When people want to do piano labs or maker spaces, we have the money for all that goods. It's not going to get major construction done, but I don't think in general, most of the stuff we're talking about is major construction. You know, if anybody comes and says they want to be the most amazing performing arts place ever, and they need a huge facility, I think that's going to be something that we'll have to grow the program into eventually, right?
So does anybody else have any 2 cents to throw into this? You know, it almost seems like measure Q or P, excuse me, measure P, in terms of, you know, all of the needs for the elementary schools in Isbell, that fund can take care of it, assuming that we're getting that 8.5 in hardship funds for redoing Isbell.
When you have that 8.5 on there, it does look like there's, you know, like you said, there's the other $11.5 million still there. You know, maybe we could consider designing an NPR or something. I do just getting a good design back and moving forward with this project and getting it underway in some fashion at these prices will, I think, ease my stomach with moving forward with other major projects utilizing these funds. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But I think like playgrounds, you know, I marked them here. We could easily do these playgrounds. These were the site allocations. That's what's remaining. It doesn't mean we're going to spend that much, but those 2 schools need the playground soonest, and we have the McKevitt HVAC are still kind of the major things, probably. We still have
Is-
less than $500,000, so.
Well, I mean, can we go ahead and start that process for those three things then? I mean, is
Yeah,
it
this
waiting
is-
just,
So electrical is underway right now. Once electrical finishes, then we'll move on to the actual HVAC installation.
Right.
We might
Yeah,
be doing
okay.
some of that this summer, actually. We did just order like 50 more compressors. So that's for the high school and for McKevitt.
so is McKevitt then, is that HVAC essentially underway then? I mean, is it fair to put that up there?
Yeah, essentially, I would say. So you want me to put it up? Want me to put it up here?
No, I mean, I'm just saying, you know, if compressors are ordered, right, then, I mean, it means it's moving, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's gonna
Yeah.
happen for sure. That's gonna happen.
Yeah, that's not just a hypothetical, right?
No.
I mean, and in that sense, you know, why wouldn't you move those two playgrounds up there too? I don't think those are big gambles.
No.
You know, I know that if we were sitting in a board meeting, right, and I was looking at numbers like this and you were asking us, do you want to do it? I'd probably say, yeah. I mean, it is, I mean, kind of to Lencho's point, right? I mean, there are needs out there, you know, we do have, you know, these aren't big numbers we're talking about. Let's get them done, you know. There was one other source of money that the governor did put out there, and we have no idea I don't think we have an idea of what it looks like, but he did say that there was going to be additional money for deferred maintenance too. I think it was 1.8 billion.
Yeah, and I haven't seen the details. We'll see on Friday, what school services kind of says about that. I did see the blurb there that he's talking about deferred maintenance, but I don't know what that means, if they're going to give it to schools in some type of grant to use for these things, or if we're going to be able to put in for matching money for deferred maintenance. I don't really know what that proposal is at this point.
Daniel, this is Gabino.
Mhm.
I have a question about preschool and early childhood education. I know that the district is expanding to provide preschool to a number of students. So is there anything allocated for that short-term and long-term? Second question is, I apologize if I'm not up on this, whether the plan is to build another school in the Harvest Project. And then a question related to that is, if not, and if you own some acreage, I think Ventura College is looking to purchase some property in the community to expand their East Campus.
Yeah, so I guess I'll address some of that in that order. We have put in for an application to the CDE regarding expanding to preschool. So we're waiting to hear back here very soon. We should get word.
Wonderful.
That was like 250K, right? Or something like that.
No, it's almost $2 million worth of
Oh,
continued funding.
oops,
Yeah,
never
I
mind.
think the 250K, I think, was just a planning grant.
Yeah, so we have a planning grant that was already given to us. It was allocated to every school for universal pre-kindergarten education planning. So we have that. But we put in for it's called CSPP grants, California State Preschool Program, and so those are school slots. And so we requested a total of 160 school slots between Blanchard and Barbara Webster in both full day and partial day slots. And so if those are granted to us, then basically it kind of works on an ADA funding kind of situation. We have those slots and we take enrollment, and then we have quarterly updates to the school, to the CDE, about how many kids showed up every day, and we get we get funded based on that enrollment, on that kind of ADA of for those slots.
But that's not for facilities though.
It's not for
Yeah.
facilities. So there is a facilities grant. They can, and they're talking about continuing to add funds to that to build facilities, and that's up to a 75% of the program to build facilities. We already have 2 classrooms that are pretty close, that are preschool ready at Blanchard, and part of the proposal to consolidate the district office is to move IT from 3 classrooms at Barbara Webster over to the district office. So it'll open up those 3 classrooms. So we already have, we'll have permanent classrooms ready. They'll just need minor renovations to get them preschool ready. Both of those are already in kind of preschool areas. Webster is in that kind of courtyard with already a preschool style playground in the center that MAOF uses. And the district shares with them. And then Blanchard already has a separate space on the side. I think eventually it would be great to consider building some other permanent buildings on definitely at Blanchard and maybe potentially at Webster or just further modernization. But I don't think that the district is going to need to find substantial money. You know, I think that whenever those happen, I think the district will be able to kind of slip that into the planning. You know, we might be talking about $2-3 million if we're building something substantial at, say, Blanchard.
Wonderful.
You know, in terms of messaging, you know, I would advocate that we list it, right?
Probably
With a-
down here, like
Yeah,
preschool.
right. You know, we don't know what that's going to look like, and even like the design day type of things, right? We don't know what that's going to look like, but you know, it doesn't have to be encumbered or anything like that. It's just saying that, hey, these are things that we know we're going to be investing in. Eventually, they're like the tier 2, tier 3 type of, you know, things we were talking about. You know, because again, I would rather see the bigger picture and the list, right? To always keep in mind, hey, you spend your wad now, it doesn't mean we're going to have money later for some of these other things. You know, I mean, and money comes and goes, right? Right now we're living in flush times and it feels really good. But we just one bad recession and we're screwed again.
Yep.
Like 2008 wasn't very much fun for anybody. How long did that last? I don't remember because I wasn't on the board, but like
I worked for different school districts then, but I could tell you that 2008, 9 ramifications really hit in 9-10, 10-11, 11-12, and we really didn't start pulling out until 12-13, and then 13-14 is when the state passed the LCFF funding model, and so part of that was kind of getting over the whole financial downturn. So really it was somewhere along the lines of 12-13, 13-14 before we got out of it. And I think until recently, every single school services budget update normally included a slide that showed that we were still behind on funding from the 7-8 school year. So like adjusted for inflation, basically we hadn't hit the equal per pupil funding as of 7-8 just a couple years ago. So yeah, it's not good when we hit a downturn.
Kevin, Dr. Aguirre also brought up into and part of his question, has there been any conversation with the community college?
Oh, I can let Mr. Weinstein talk about that. I think we were in a meeting with them a while back.
Yeah, so we met with the Ventura Community College School District as well as Ventura Community College Board and the president, Kim. And we the main thing is that we have this 8.3 acres that is reserved for us, and that we felt that we couldn't make a decision on this 8.3 acres until we are fully aware of the build out of the harvest area and the needs and of that particular area. So we are doing a plausibility study, I guess is the best way to put it, with demographics and looking at the amount of school children that will be in that area and what the costs will be to build a school on that. And then once we have all that information and we bring it back to the strategic planning committee and the board, then we'll know better what we want to do, if we want to do anything with that property, or if the board, would be willing to hand it over. But that, Kevin, I think it's 15 years we have the rights or something like that.
Oh, like 30 years, I think.
Or like 30 years. So
Yeah.
it would be a little foolish for us to give up those rights without really understanding the total impact over, over a long period of time of the build out. Right now, we know that Harvest is going to 1,950 units. There's another 288 units being built out there. There's a whole bunch of different things going on. So we told the Ventura College that it's not that we don't want to work with them, but at this particular point and in the near future, we probably wouldn't be able to do, give them any information that they could plan on. But we did talk to them about, the possibility of using facilities that we already own, if they would be interested in that. They said they were not interested in that they wanted to be closer to Fillmore than where our facilities were, even though I told them it's a 2-mile difference. So anyway, so that was the last conversation we had. And I told them if anything changed, we'd reach out and let them know.
All right, thank you for that update, Jeff. That's very informative. Thanks.
Yeah.
All right, so I talked about preschool. You had 3 questions. We talked about preschool. We just touched on the harvest. Sorry, did we touch on the third part? What was the third question?
Yeah, I think it was the availability of land that might be up for sale for the college district, which Jeff, provided information on.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
Should we go on to Measure Q in the high school?
So, I mean, this money kind of continues to get tighter and tighter, but I think we should continue to move forward with the 2 projects we have underway. And then, the available domino right now is also the pool. And then the way that it would work is, we talked about last meeting, is if we find a new place for Renaissance to live, maybe a bigger campus, some more space, then that might open up that land for the performing arts building. That might take 2 or 3 years to open up that space. So really we're in limbo at the rest of the projects, because also the cafeteria kitchen building was waiting for the performing arts building, because the band is currently taking up old cafeteria space. So the hope was, once the band is out of that space, then the cafeteria can get remodeled and open up that. So performing arts building would be the third. So we have underway, can do at the moment. We can get into design and start working on, and then 2-3 years, and then afterwards. So
There's a lot of things on this list.
other stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, land acquisition, we were talking about this last time. The idea of finding Renaissance a new home kind of gets rid of the need for land acquisition, right? Re-roofing is now in deferred maintenance. HVAC on campus is encumbered. That's happening. We finished the $1 million piece. So this is really just maybe a couple $100,000 at this point remaining. So I guess I should mark for updating some of these things that I haven't really looked at in a minute, since they haven't been on this side of the table. I'll make some notes. This is update This is gonna be deferred maintenance, should be security camera underway. This is about 50K. Baseball field lighting. This is, we should consider baseball field lighting. This is something we could do immediately if we wanted to. And, you know, Liz could chime in on the benefits the campus would receive. My understanding is that, you know, being as landlocked as they are, extending the ability to use that field into the evening, especially in the winter hours, would be a great improvement. So, and I don't know new costs. I don't know if it would be 300 or less or more. We'd have to really just start with some design and go from there.
Did you want me to chime in, Kevin? Sorry, I know you.
Oh,
We were
Liz.
talking about lighting the baseball field. What do you think about that?
We agree, and yes, there are many items here on this list. Baseball or field lighting would help not just for baseball. It would allow nighttime usage all year long. And we do have a marching band, and we've got over 40 sports teams. And so we do use the field for an alternative place for our marching band to practice, as well as for athletic team practice during various seasons. So it would definitely be a benefit. So I mean, I agree with everything on this list. Obviously, we have to consider priorities, but it would definitely be something that is a huge desire.
Actually, if it means that the marching band's going to stay later out there, I'm voting no on that.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna be a neighbor here pretty soon too. Never mind. We're not gonna, we shouldn't do that, right, Daniel?
Oh, it travels right down
Yeah.
Pleasant Street. You're going
Like
to
gonna
love
keep
it.
my kid, we're gonna keep my kids up all night.
Yes, indeed.
Oh, man.
Yeah, and obviously we know that school is now going to start at 8:30. And so this has been an ongoing, hold on, don't go. Sorry, I'm also dealing with some other issues here. But yes, so with school starting later, it's going to push everything back. And so it definitely would help us with flexibility.
Okay, so I think we can move it to something to consider now. We should be able to get some pricing on that pretty easily. And since we did just upgrade the power on campus, we do have some power more readily available there. So that might actually reduce the cost of.
I so move.
So move.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lencho wants to spend money.
No, I think I see the benefits right now, you know?
No, the thing that, okay, so I think something that we need to at least say out loud is that there's no way that we can finish this list without going into another fund.
Right. Well,
Because you're
Yeah,
already
we-
tapped
we're
out,
gonna-
right? That total is zero.
yeah, I mean, we're gonna see how much this can be deferred maintenance. Because really, a lot of this should be, and since we're gonna increase that fund, then maybe we can continue to get more stuff out of. We can free up 700K here. But this is gonna be completely inadequate, once we get to that point. Uh-oh.
Oh, it's just the ribbon.
Yeah, no, when it
Yeah.
started spinning, I thought I might have killed my computer.
Oh,
Okay. All right. So we're going to put that in red because that is not going to be enough money there. This probably not going to be enough money here. We should, and the board's going to hear a presentation soon, Wednesday, about some other modernization and energy efficiency. We've been talking about it for almost a year and a half now. And so we finally do have some proposals coming to the board. They don't cost nothing, but the good news is they do have, an annual savings amount that eventually pays for it. But,
so do we, in a sense, here's a question. So we know that the cafeteria is inadequate, right? And then what was the other one? The performing arts building is probably inadequate as well.
this probably.
The band room.
The band rooms probably, right?
Yeah.
Maybe the pool, but let's wait until that. So if we were to fully fund these, what would be the deficit? Assuming we can do, let's assume we can defer all the deferred maintenance. Maybe we can push into that deferred maintenance fund, and it doesn't have to come from Measure Q
Yeah,
or
just,
somewhere else.
just like zero that out. Let's move that all.
Yeah, or maybe you need to put, maybe we need to start seeing, because I know I would like to see, like, eventually, and maybe here, right? Like, if you had a column deferred maintenance and that's being funded out of a deferred maintenance plan, I'd love to see that broken
Okay.
out.
Yeah, I started
Because
to
then,
add some here.
yeah, because again, at the end of the day, I'd like to know, okay, if we're doing all this deferred maintenance and we're going to push, say, if you push some of the reserves into that, how much do we actually have to do that to cover everything that we've got? You know, because that would be interesting. Because if it was like, oh, well, we've got $10 million from the reserve, and if we push 3 million into deferred maintenance, we're going to cover all this stuff, then great. I don't think that that's going to be that number.
We've started to cover some of these things. So the other one we had, so we have one fund, we have deferred maintenance, like you said here, so we've got those. So then it's
Wanna
what
freeze
fund we
that?
tap next doesn't necessarily matter that much if we go into our fund 350 or if we go to fund 401. As I mentioned earlier, I do think we should keep developer fees for harvest at the moment, probably.
I would agree
Um,
with that too.
So we have 2 million here. It's not going to stretch us real far, but I mean, this is why I like to keep those kind of in our back pocket until we start to figure out what these real costs are. I mean, we already know we're going to need another million here, right? What did I just, we need another 1.5 million here. So if we might have to tap that there. And then that leaves us 600K to sprinkle.
It's not a lot.
No, I mean, I would just keep those in reserve as we start moving forward with projects.
It just seems like to get this list done, we're going to have to get a 401, excuse me. I mean, and again, I think I would be interested to see, Kevin, if you do, because again, I mean, do you see a way to get away from that?
Probably not, unless some other magic facilities money comes from the state or somehow developer, pops money for harvest or something like that. We get another CFD area going over there and pay for that facility and open up the developer fees. We'll have to get into that fund. But I just think that, once again, some of these are so far away, it's hard to allocate money there right now, knowing that current projects we're looking at could even gobble up that money. Yes, we want to do that, but unless we're going to say we're not going to do a pool because we want to reserve all the money for the band room, but then that means that cash is going to sit there for 3 years potentially. And
so 2 things on that, right? Again, if we decide that, that 7 million in 401 is really kind of up for grabs, like, I get the pool is the high school, blah, blah, blah. But, I know one of the things I'm going to be pushing is that pool really becomes a community pool, right? It's not just a high school pool. We're going to use it for other things too. So, to look at it just as a high school thing is hopefully going to be inaccurate.
right.
But, you know, to me, I look at this and go, if we want to do that pool, I don't see how you don't pull a lot of that money out of 401, given that we know that we have educational, right, purposes, the performing arts building, you know, we have a pathway, right? We're going to have a performing arts pathway, or we do, right? You know, where it's going to be built up. How do you say, well, we're not going to, you know, provide the space for that? You know, really, we'd rather have, you know, invested in the swim team. I mean, if you have to make a choice between an extracurricular and a, you know, an actual educational decision, that's easy for me to make, at least. You know, the other thing is that kitchen building, there is another source of funding, right? Potentially.
Yeah.
And
There's, in the next number of years, who knows where the next more sources of funding? I mean, that's, I think.
well, I meant
the
in the
CTE is getting funded for facilities, you know, all over
Right.
the place. So
Yeah.
who knows? In a few years, maybe we can get $5 or $6 million CTE grant to help us.
Well, this year's in the May revise, right? You know, so not just later on, but like stuff that's on the table. I know that one of the things that they were talking about is setting aside money for performing arts.
Yep.
Specifically,
Yep.
right? And then there's another set of money where they're guaranteeing the federal expansion for nutrition services. If the feds come through with the money, they say you can put that to the your facilities, your kitchen facilities. So that could be another set of money. Now, I get those are hypotheticals still, but we should know about those by July, right?
Know about some of it, potentially.
About some of it, yeah. You know, I think that another thing, right, is that you're right on the performing arts building 3 years away, blah blah blah. But does it really kind of mean that either, you know, we've got to buy those parcels, right? Or does it mean that we should make a commitment to moving Renaissance to a bigger space? And should we, you know, get that process underway? Because we really think that Renaissance needs a bigger space, shouldn't we be planning for doing that then?
Yeah, I think that's probably what we're going to be working on this coming year, right? I mean, we're going to do a feasibility study for Harvest. That's going to include demographics across the city. It's going to include boundaries. How would boundaries look if we added a new elementary there? How would our populations mix? How many kids would we have at each of the schools? You know, would that give us the ability to potentially reutilize or repurpose one of our other sites? So that's what we're going to be studying in the next year and talking about. And if that answer is yes, then maybe that's how we move Renaissance.
If that answer is no, do we need to be looking at that alternative too?
Yeah, yeah, of course, it's always going to be plan B. I don't know if that answer is no, that we can't, there's no other space for Renaissance, or that we can't repurpose one of our current other properties for Renaissance. Then we're going to have to put our minds together for plan B.
It'll go to Harvard, to the Harvest.
Well, it might be that the feasibility study shows we don't need an elementary school, and Harvest is our extra land, you know. Could be. We mentioned that, I think, at the last meeting, that could be, but that to me seems like a weird switch. I think I'd rather have an elementary school and then move Harvest to a school in town. Move Renaissance to a property in town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Liz?
So thank you for all of the ideas. Just with relationship to the Renaissance discussion, I know expanding, their ability to provide programs for more students and more alternative opportunities would definitely be a benefit for the high school, just given kind of our limitations currently. And so being able to, expand Renaissance to, a couple hundred students, may, by looking for, another location in the future, I think that then opens up space to do some of the other facilities upgrades that we need, and also giving the high school much needed acreage, right? We know that we're on the very small end of comprehensive high schools in terms of our square footage. And I think then when just looking at proposed projects and kind of thinking about band, cafeteria, and pool upgrades, that we consider establishing maybe a criteria for maybe how we determine what priorities are, or we just make recommendations, obviously, because these are recommendations for the board to consider. But I know one obvious consideration in my mind would be looking at the number of students impacted, looking at if it's instructional programming, and then looking at maybe where the opportunities exist for collaboration and partnership with the community. And we look at how we prioritize that criteria. So it's just something to think about, because obviously we want the biggest bang for our buck. So where is it that we are going to have the most impact on students? And of course, we want to have big impacts on instructional programming. We also know that cafeteria upgrade is going to impact the entire school population. So these are all things that need to be seriously discussed, right?
I
would
kind of
agree.
like that. Maybe it's a rubric. Should we develop a rubric to kind of talk about and compare some of these projects?
I think it would be helpful, right? I mean, as far as I'm concerned, right, when I'm looking at this as a board member, the elementary school, it looks like Measure P, we're going to have enough money there to do what we need to, right? It looks like it, right? Regardless of what happens with Isabel, regardless of what happens with, the K-8s, or other grade config, that there's going to be enough there, and there's play with it, that we're going to be fine. It's really the high school and its pot of money that seems to be the one that's going to be the biggest struggle. So I'd like to see that kind of, decision making, instead of just saying, well, let's do the pool because we can. It's like, well, wait a minute, let's make generational, investments, right? So again, if we can move Renaissance and put the pool there, and that could maybe enhance how we access that for the community too, that seems like a win-win-win. But then let's really get serious about getting Renaissance, a new site. That just seems like that's something that's gonna, that we should push that forward, faster than if we can, or
I think,
Yeah.
I mean, I think, I don't have the exact contract for the demographic study in front of me yet. We've talked about it. I was hoping to get it to the board meeting here next week, but it might not be till the 8th. But I think we're going to be able to do some analysis and figure out some of those questions in the coming months. And yeah, we can push that conversation to the forefront here once we have, I think, the numbers to support that conversation.
Because if we could decide that, I mean, maybe it's aggressive, but wouldn't it be ideal if we could move Renaissance, not this coming school year, but the next? Because then that would start freeing up
Well, but we won't be able to move Renaissance to a location in town. And if we might not be able to do that until the Harvest
Harvest
School
built out.
is ready to take some of the capacity of elementary students. So it might not be, might be in 2 years,
Would it be,
3
would it
years.
be crazy to talk with the city and see if there's any, buildings and or properties that we could think about that might be available? Just as a, hey, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, we're working on continuing to be, partnerships with the city. So I know that I've been working with Greg Barnes quite a bit on the summer school, and we have on our list facilities because we have a lot of core competencies, and we actually share facilities already in a few aspects. And right now we trade money back and forth with them. And so we were thinking about comparing some of that and trying to come up with an MOU or a joint use for some of our facilities so that we can stop just trading money back and forth and charging each other. And then also maybe we can find the ability to better utilize our facilities across the city. So we will be having those conversations in the next year. I think we should move our board meetings to the city council's office because they have air conditioning.
John, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, thanks. Has there been a study to see with some of these projects, like, the new pool or the new theater, about potential income to bring in from different areas? Like if it's theater, about renting out the facility, or the pool having programs that can regenerate money for the school?
Yeah, so that's something we can consider. I know at previous LEAs I've worked for, one particular, we built what we called an aquatic center, and part of the feasibility of that was definitely the fact that we could rent it out quite a bit to local master's classes and during the summer to youth programs. But I think that there might be less opportunities here to really charge for a lot of those programs. But we definitely will consider it. And I think, regarding the pool, we're going to be considering partnering with the city and the Y and Ventura on managing and running and dealing with some of those ongoing costs. I'm not sure if we'll really have income, so to speak, but maybe we can at least mitigate the ongoing costs of maintenance on an annual basis.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be a lot of money, but at least if it would bring some additional funding for those ongoing costs, I mean, that might be something to consider.
Yeah, that's definitely part of the equation. Yep.
Thank you.
All right, it is 3:26. I think we should, wrap up today, but, what's clear about what we've discussed and, any actions or any recommendations? There were certain things that, Lorenzo had pointed out, like pushing up the playgrounds, and I think you moved a couple other things maybe.
So I think recommendations to try to move forward with some of the playgrounds. We're already moving forward with the McKevitt electrical projects. So, that's something we can hop on if that's the will of the committee and the board.
And then I think the other one was, for the high school projects to create some sort of, rubric or way to measure, priorities.
I think we were looking at the lighting in the baseball field. is
Yeah,
something
that too.
Yeah.
Right,
something
bringing
I
that up.
think we were gonna move up. 'Cause that's like tip money considering all these millions,
It is. We'll just raid the tip jar.
Yeah, it feels
Hey, can I go
feels
to,
funny, man.
I'll be your waiter.
Yeah,
So pushing up those smaller projects and looking at a way of figuring out priorities at a high school. And maybe somehow, you know, accelerating a Renaissance remove. Again, I don't know what that would look like. Jeff, you can make
Yeah,
that
I mean,
decision, I think.
we're gonna reach out to our realtor friend and ask if there's any availability, you know, that's reasonable where we can maybe acquire land, lease land, long-term lease on land, and see if we can move Renaissance to a more open space area that will allow the high school to use that space for maybe possibly a band room, and Renaissance, you know, only has 120 to 130 kids max that they can handle. And we all agree that a district of our size, that, you know, a good alternative education program will probably should be over 200 students. And so we do need to do that. Plus, they don't have certain facilities like chem labs and things like that. So we do need to find room for extra buildings. So if we can find something reasonable, then we can move forward with moving Renaissance. But right now, we really haven't identified any current land that we own or site that we have to move Renaissance to yet.
Okay. All right. Is there any final comments before we adjourn?
just I want to thank Kevin for the report. Thank you, Kevin.
We will have one last meeting 2 weeks from now. Largely, I don't think I'm not sure if there's anything from this discussion that'll table over, but we'll let you know. And but the main thing would just to be start talking about next year and the subjects that we want to be tackling. And then there you go.
Is there any possibility of once the May revise or these other potential new funding sources may become available, to just to get a quick little write-up, you know, just for your information, things look better because we got some additional here and there, and that would be helpful. There's a lot of suspense. I'm eager to hear what really comes out of this. So that's a big surplus. I mean, it was amazing. You know?
Yeah,
They're
sure.
talking a lot of money.
Yeah, I have a webinar on Friday that's going to really help us kind of parse out some of the pieces that are important for us, and I'm happy to do a little update for everybody and get it out by like early next week.
I was just thinking that if we are going to meet in 2 weeks, I don't know what new information would be available, but if you have something, then that would be a good use of time.
Okay. So we're talking about May 1st. I mean, sorry, June 1st.
I don't know.
Yes. All right, everybody. We will adjourn this meeting at 3:31.
But
Thanks.
it's a scheduled meeting June 1st. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Diana?
Yep. So,
Thank you.
all right. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you, everybody.